Hello everyone. Welcome you to our last day of BA Excellence Conference, BA Job Function Transformation. And guys, it's a great thing that you are still here with us. If you're new here, you have opportunity to see all 4 days that was before that. Um, in our YouTube channel. And yeah, today we have great speakers actually. I just want to remind you that today we will have Jan Mazurek, Yulia Kasaryanka, Amal Bragi with their great topics. So stay tuned, and then at the end of the day, we will tell you about a little bit about results of this conference. So yeah, please stay with us till the end and have a great conference day. And I want to pass mic to our moderator and speaker for first topic. Guys, good luck.
Thank you. Welcome to the fifth and final day of the BA Excellence Conference dedicated to the BA role transformation. My name is Adam Norder. Firstly, thank you for joining us. We are glad you're here. As stated, it's been a great week of sessions. Our speakers have been sharing their perspectives of how the BA role has changed over the last few years, what the landscape looks like today, and what the future might hold for our BAs. If you missed any of the sessions from the previous days or would like to go back and review those sessions or share those sessions with others, you can get all those sessions on the YouTube channel at BA Community or at wearecommunity.io. Our first speaker today is ready to get us excited about the BA role, remind us that BAs are the unsung heroes of many projects. He has been teaching and mentoring BAs for over 10 years. I introduce to you Jan Mazurek. Jan, take it away.
Sorry, was double muted. So yes, hello everyone, and welcome to today's session. And Adam, thank you so much for this nice presentation. It's so good to be here. It's my second presentation in this conference. I'm super happy to have the opportunity to share with you a bit of my knowledge and a bit of my experience that, like you mentioned, I've been teaching people for the last 10 years or so on various different areas. And actually, I do have a bit of a presentation to share with you today. And I do hope that the information that I will share with you in this presentation, in this talk, will actually be helpful to identify what we as the BAs can do, but also what our customers can do in order to get us one step closer to bridge the gap that we might have while working on various different projects. Now, as this session will be that will be interactive, later on you will see I will share with you the code to join the Mentimeter, because I will have a couple of questions for you just to get your perception, your insights on a couple of topics and a couple of questions that I will ask you. So without further ado, let us get straight into the topic. And let me share with you information about the gaps that I was able to identify across the years of mentoring. So like Adam mentioned, I'm a business analyst with 10 years of teaching, but also nearly approaching now on 20 years of IT work in general. And 15 of those years were in the role of the business analyst, and I worked on various different projects across different countries. I've performed various different responsibilities, and a part of working in projects, I'm also line manager, speaker at the conferences, but also I am a mentor in the mentoring programs. And only last year, I've managed to mentor 15 people from various different groups, various different experience levels. I've managed to mentor 6 people preparing for the position of the lead business analyst, 2 people who are preparing for the senior business analyst position, but also 5 people who are putting their first step into the IT world. So the experience that I have in mentoring, and that's just only last year, previous years were more of the same. The experience is quite wide, and what I've managed to identify that regardless of the country from whom my mentee was, because I was mentoring people from all the way from Canada to Vietnam, across Netherlands, Belarus, Hungary, or Ukraine, I've managed to identify that there are similarities regardless of the countries from which the mentee is actually from. And like I mentioned, as this session will be an interactive one, I would like to invite everyone to join the Menti portal. So please either scan the QR code that you can see here on the screen or go to menti.com and type in the code 59704505, because there will be a couple of questions that I will have for you just to get your opinion on various different topics that we'll be covering in this talk. I also, just if you are watching us on live stream on YouTube, I have pasted that link to direct link to Menti in the YouTube channel, and I'm super happy that we already have a couple of thumbs up. So great to have you here with us today. I do hope that we'll have also those thumbs ups appearing or answers in the questions once we will be going through the presentation. So without further ado, let us get straight into the topic, because I have prepared for you, like I've mentioned, the challenge that I identified that also can give us the opportunity for our future growth. And in order to use that opportunity, I have also prepared with a certain solution, and I will share with you also what is the benefit of applying that particular solution. Sounds enigmatic, sounds a bit intriguing, I hope, but without further ado, let us get into the first step of it, and let us talk about the challenge that I identified when it comes to the BA role altogether. And the first, and I think most important aspect of the BA role itself is actually identifying what is the BA role and why we are delivering the work on the projects we are delivering. Because I've noticed in my career when doing mentoring, and not only for the people who are just putting the first steps into the IT world, but I've noticed that not everyone understands the BA role. And sometimes people were telling me that they identify themselves as actually they just work as scribes, that they don't have the real impact on the project, they don't have the real impact on the product, they just tell them what the product owner is telling them, and they just write user stories, and they are transformed more into the backlog managers rather than the business analysts or product owners, or even proxy product owners. But at the same time, I think we need to get back to the basics, and we need to actually identify that our role is in the title itself, business analyst. Meaning we need to analyze the business. We need to make sure that the features that we are taking, the functionalities that we are delivering, are solving a certain business problems. We'll get to more of that in just a couple of minutes when we get to talking about the business needs. But also, some years ago, I had a situation where I was approached by my colleague who is a .NET developer, and he told me, "Jan, I'm so tired of the constant evolution of the .NET language, and I would like to actually switch my career paths to become a business analyst, because you just do the talking, right? You lead the meetings, and my English is good, so I don't see a problem. Why not to become a business analyst?" Well, truth to be told, it's a bit more than just doing the talks, because if you look at the timeline of the methodologies that are being constantly evolved and constantly changing, we also have those changes on our side. Introduction of the extreme programming, the Scrum, the Kanban, scaled agile framework, specification by example. There is a lot of that to incorporate and to understand. There's also the business domains. There is also the building of the relations, the understanding of the process, the coming up with the solutions to the problems, right? So there is a lot to take on board, but also from the customer side, sometimes I think that there might be situations in which the customers not always understand what they are getting when they actually get a business analyst to the project. They don't see the full value that we can bring to the picture, and we are kind of limited by the amount of the responsibilities. And of course, with time, we can build the capabilities and we can build the trust from our customers to get more and more responsibilities. But we somehow need to meet halfway, and I will be talking about how we can do that when we get to the solution part. But just wanted to show you that there is more to BA work than just having conversations. And my first question that I have for you, and this is why we are using the Menti for this presentation, is according to the Chaos Report of 2020, how many of the projects were identified as successful when it comes to the agile projects? So go to Menti, share with me your answer, share with me your thoughts. I would like to get to know how many of those projects you think in the report were identified as successful in agile projects. Because that's kind of also shows why we are constantly delivering and developing new methodologies, new frameworks, new ways of delivering the value to our customers, right? So I see that already there are some answers appearing. There are majority of people are providing the answer that there is actually 42%. And surprisingly enough, it's 42% of people share that 42% is the is the answer. And exactly looking at the chaos report of 2020, that is the correct answer. The 42% of projects in Agile, according to the chaos report, were identified as successful, with 47% being challenged. Being challenged means that either they exceeded the budget, they limited the scope, they were not delivered on time, and 11% of the projects were failed. That's kind of a big number of projects that didn't were not completed with a success. And it's even worse when we look at the waterfall type of projects, because in waterfall, according to the same report, only 13% of the projects were identified as successful, and more of those were challenged, and even more of those they were failed. So definitely there is a way to improve, and I'm not saying it's only the business analysts that need to improve, but of course there potentially could be something with what we can do better. But next question that I have for you, based on the same report, out of the features that we are designing and out of the features that we are delivering for our customers, how many of those you think are being frequently used by our customers? So we have, again, 4 answers here. It's 20%, 40%, 60%, or 80%. So it would be good to get your opinion on this one as well. How many of those in the chaos report did the users or did the analysts creating that report identified as frequently used? So I see more and more answers are appearing. That's definitely good to see that. So I will still give you a couple of seconds to come up with the answers. And we see, no one has selected yet the 80% value. The numbers keep growing, And again, majority of the people decided to go with the 20%. That's the biggest value here. And truth to be told, looking at the chaos report, if we would look how many of the features are frequently used, that is exactly that result. It is the 20% of the features that are often used by our users, with 50% of the functionalities being hardly ever used. Now, I'm not saying this is a bad thing, because there might be functionalities like, I don't know, accounting reconciliation being done at the end of every month, only once a month, right? That we only use 12 times in a year. There might be some functionalities that, for example, if we look at solver functionality of Excel, I'm sure a lot of you are using Excel as a tool in your day-to-day work, but potentially not every one of you heard that there is that functionality in the system, right? So sometimes it is also about identifying whether we are delivering the right solution to the problems that we are meeting when working on the project. And we cannot skip talking about the elephant in the room, because talking about the elephant in the room, the way how we receive the requirements will greatly depend on the fact with whom we are talking, and their perspective depends on where they are sitting. And you might have a situation in the project where product sponsor will give you a contradictory requirement to the end user, because product sponsor might follow the procedure, whereas the end users might already know some shortcuts and quicker ways to have the same solution. And different people will see the same object, the same item, from different perspective based on the place that they are sitting, right? So definitely it is also something that we need to make sure that we get the full picture and the full understanding of the problem that we are trying to define. And here we come to the point where we actually talk a bit about the customer service and what we deliver to our customers, and where it meets the customer care. Because Toyota, in their philosophy, they are amazing when it comes to the delivering of the quality of the items. And in their philosophy, they have a statement that it's not enough to meet the expectations of the customer, but it's even more important to exceed those expectations and to be rewarded with a smile. Now, I had a Toyota car, and I remember when giving it to the car station, I always received it back vacuumed and washed, and I felt, oh, this is so nice. And I know I was paying for it, right? But it kind of made me feel a bit special. When I had a Nissan, also Japanese car, that never happened for Nissan when I was giving that to the car station, right? So same country, but already the philosophy of the company might be slightly different, and that's why I kind of enjoy the customer care that Toyota gave me. But that not necessarily means that we need to do the same thing while working on the project, because we need to make sure that we get the right understanding of the problem that we are trying to solve, and that we are focusing on the right item with the right amount of information, that we are not overcooking certain solutions and we are not gold plating certain things. Because if we will try to exceed the expectations of our customers at the expense of our own budget or project budget, and we will deliver things that the customer was not actually asking, because the customer might just want to have a standard chair to put in the kitchen. But if instead of that we will design the whole kitchen, and the customer would actually not be interested in that, then definitely there is something that we could improve in terms of our work. And last conference that we had, we talked a bit about the usage of the AI, and I thought, let's actually ask the AI, what are the top 10 reasons why IT projects fail? And among those answers, the AI provided, information about the insufficient communication that, or ineffective communication, that we do communicate with our stakeholders, but sometimes we don't speak the same language. And I'm not talking about language as usage of English, but just not necessarily on the same page, using the same words to describe the same things. Sometimes it's unrealistic expectations of the customers. But then again, we also can manage those expectations by talking clearer, or sometimes even active listening as a skill to develop, to make sure that we try to again solve the right problem. Sometimes it might be about the fact of poor planning or lack of engagement of the stakeholders on the project. And tell me, looking at those 10 reasons that you see on the screen, does any of those sound familiar? Were you ever on a project where that situation did occur? Or maybe you know someone who was in that situation. So I would definitely like to get to know your opinion, whether this is something that you've experienced, whether this is something that you were a part of. And actually, we've all been there, right? 100% of the respondents to this question already provided with the answer that yes, there is something to that. There is something that we could potentially improve in the ways of working, right? So definitely that's good to know that I am not alone with my observations in this area. And if we would look at Atlassian and their company values, right? In their company values, they have a value dedicated to delivering the value on the customer, or actually maybe not necessarily delivering the value, but not to interfere with the relation with the customer, right? And even if we look also at our own EPAM values, at EPAM we also have quite similar value, where we have the value to focus on the customer. But it not necessarily means that we need to blindly listen to everything that we receive going our ways, because I was auditing projects that we were in a situation where at the end of the sprint, the customer tells, okay, I like the functionality, but could you please move the button from the left to right and change it from orange to blue? And that was taken into the next sprint as the next top priority item, because that was the latest feedback on the customer. And now my question is, how does the change of the color deliver the business value to the customer? Now, I'm not saying we should not capture that requirement. Yes, let's capture it, but let's prioritize it accordingly, so that we make sure that the solution that we define serves the needs of the users that will be using the system. And that solution will help achieve the business requirement. The business goal is delivered by giving that button, and that functionality exists. Awesome. Let's focus on other functionalities that will deliver the business value. And if time will allow us, we will focus on the right requirements, and we will deliver anything that is of a lower priority, but also might be valuable to our customer. But let us not lose the big goal of delivering that functionality. And sometimes that's why we need to have the opportunity to speak up and to talk with our customers to make sure that we are focusing on the right thing. So summing up the challenge and summing up those issues that I identified, it kind of gives me the overview that 70% according to the same report, 70% of the projects were challenged or failed because of the communication, because of the things that we didn't communicate clear enough, fast enough, quick enough to the right people in the right way, through the right channels. We didn't engage them quick enough. We did not had the opportunity to have enough engagement for the stakeholders, or we didn't know how to even ask the proper questions. So in general, there is a big gap that I identified that potentially could help us improve working on the projects going forward. So if that's the challenge of in terms of communication, let us look at the solution, what we can do all together to make sure that we will address that challenge. And the first step and the first idea that I have for you in order to improve the situation is kind of have a change of the mind shift. And instead of being reactive to just receiving the task and delivering the task, let us start being proactive. Let us try to find opportunities and to try to analyze whether the requirements, again, really solve the business problem, really bring the value to the customer. We have already at EPAM success stories of the functionalities that we have came up with, and we suggested to our customers saying, we think this functionality will benefit you going forward, right? And by doing so, we might have this opportunity to actually, as one of the quotes say, be the change you want to see in the world, right? And not only kind of wait for the task that we will receive, but also sometimes in a proactive way come up with your ideas. Not long ago, I was on a conference where the speaker was on the stage, and there was like a terrible echo, and someone said, "Do you have a different microphone because there is the echo?" And one of the participants on the conference said that the problem is not with the microphone, the problem is with the settings of the speaker, because there is wrong settings with a lot of reverb and a lot of background noise enabled to make that echo. And the speaker being on the stage said, "Okay, that's the problem. So what is the solution?" And for me, that sentence was like, wow, awesome. Let's not only try to be the whistleblower and identifying what are the problems, but it's also, whenever we see a problem, try to in a proactive way come up with a solution, right? And the solution was simple: change the settings on the console to remove the echo effect on the speaker. It was applied, it was fixed, we moved forward. The conference was a big success. Everyone was super happy, and just a bit of proactiveness, right? But in addition to that, a part of the Mindshift itself, it's also focused on improving the soft skills, right? And let's make sure that we talked a bit about this on yesterday's talk when we had the discussion panel. Ted Vail from a marketing team from US mentioned about actually improving the self-confidence. I would also like to mention about the assertiveness, or if the communication is the problem, also let's try to improve the communication, especially the active listening skills, right? We no longer work in silos. We no longer work with, only with the software, only with the products. We work as teams. So let's follow the value, act as a team. And let's, in that case, improve our communication. And I remember in the past, the customer was coming to me with a problem, and I was already solutionizing, trying to save the time for the customer. But how was I able to solutionize a problem if I didn't listen carefully to what the problem was? So sometimes taking a step back and listening to what the problem actually is might help us to make sure that the solution that we apply, and again, looking at that pyramid, going back to the basics, that the system I'm designing, that the solution that I'm delivering, that the solution that the whole team is delivering is targeted on the business needs and the business goals of our customers, right? So definitely improving the soft skills, improving communication, useful thing to go forward. And how we can also do that, how we can make sure that our people will feel that they are delivering the good value, or that they kind of feel that they have a certain impact on the project, and that they are no longer working only as scribes, but also they are working as someone who has this positive impact, right? We tell stakeholders someone who is impacted or can impact the solution. So how we can make sure that people have the impact? By empowering people. And that's something that was also mentioning in this conference. We had a speaker who was talking about the empowerment of people working on the project. And if we manage to grow to a company of this magnitude with so many people worldwide, perhaps it's because we know how to deliver the projects, and we have the right skills, and we have the consultancy, and we have the expertise on how to deliver good value to the customer. So let's make sure that our people are not afraid, for example, to ask questions, that they are not afraid to suggest solutions, that they are not only here to work on delivering the task, but they also can have a real impact and a real influence to not only work as a backlog manager, but actually, if they are working as product owners, that they have an impact on that product itself. And this is all on us to actually build an environment in which our employees will feel motivated, that they will feel that they have the autonomy of what to deliver, that we will not, micromanage them, and we will not be, looking at their hands every single day. I'm sure if I would ask you right now, if you would be annoyed that at the end of the day you would need to send a report on what you've been working the whole day, probably that would be, I'll get 100% again of response that yes, that could be an annoying thing. But let's give people the autonomy. Let's give them the possibility to work on the task on which they are working, and make sure that the tasks are of the right challenging level, so that they can apply their skills best to their abilities, that they have the right competencies to perform those tasks, that we assign their roles correctly. And if even the tasks are a bit challenging, and if they are outside of the comfort zone for our employees, that they have the right support and they have the right people to ask the questions, and give them a bit of time, so that we will not also pressure them into tight deadlines that sometimes people will again strive for excellence at the expense of their burnout or at the expense of their exhaustion, right? And in time, as they will get better and better, they will perform those tasks faster and faster, and they will be able to apply those skills best to their abilities. And that will give them the purpose for themselves, that will give them the purpose for the company, that they will feel that they have the impact on the project itself. And doing all of that, those three factors, the autonomy, mastery, and the purpose, all of that aggregates to the motivation. This is the motivation model from Mr. Daniel Pink. It's called Motivation 3.0. You can read more on that in various different sources across the internet. But this motivation will give them the opportunity to have challenging tasks that will get them the motivation to overcome the challenges and feel a sense of accomplishment, to help them develop the skills and develop their career going forward. But it also gives them a bit of excitement and enjoyable working environment. So this is, again, all on us to build that environment of cooperation, collaboration, and that way we will have people who will be motivated to deliver great value, and together we will be able to act as a team and strive for excellence. What will be the benefits if you apply this solution? Well, the benefits, and I will be quick here, are very simple and very basic. You will have the team that not only will be focused on the customer, but also they will be focused on the goal of us as a company, of the team, of the customer, on the business goals, and they would be dedicated, we all will be dedicated towards achieving that certain goal, to make sure that at the end of the day, every person on the project is happy. We as the BAs identify sometimes ourselves as the interconnectors, that I need to satisfy the customer, I need to satisfy my development team, I need to satisfy my stakeholders, I need to satisfy my unit. So it is a challenge, of course it is a challenge, but it's also a great opportunity to challenge myself and to become better every single day, right? So that's something that we can also have to make sure that we are focused on the goal. And if we are focused on the goal and we build that environment of people who are empowered and who are motivated, we also will have these motivated teams who will actually every single day enjoy coming to work, and they will repay us with good quality of delivering the services. Richard Branson said that if you will take care of the employees, they will take care of the customers. So let's make sure that our employees feel well taken care of, that they have good working environment, that they have good working conditions, that they have the right tools, the right skills, the right expertise to perform the tasks. And by empowering the people, let's give them a bit of sense of ownership, that we are not only here to do the task, but we are actually here to change the world. And that's something that I say to my customers on projects whenever I have the meet and greet session at the very beginning. It's good to introduce yourself and to mention that, yes, hello, I'm Jan, I'm a business analyst, but I don't tell them that I will be responsible for the requirements or I will be responsible for improving the process, because that's not necessarily something that the customer wants to hear or that they understand how I will be working with that. But I sometimes say, I'm Jan, I'm a business analyst, and my goal on this project is to make your life better. What I mean by that is that, take the process that is not working and improve it for better. Improve the UI, for example, change the operations, right? So with that said, we will have this sense of ownership and we will have this opportunity to, once again, be the change we want to see in the world. And we will have really this opportunity to impact our customers and our projects and our teams and our employees in a positive way. That said, if you would like to have a conversation on this topic in more details, then let's stay in touch. Feel free to reach out to me throughout different channels. You can drop me an email at @Mazurek@epam.com. You can find me on Skype. You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can also like my profile on Instagram. Let's stay in touch. Let's discuss in more details. So I'd be more than happy to have more opinion from you also. How do you see your experience on the project and whether you identified the same gaps as I did in my career?
Thank you, Jan. A couple of quick questions for you. Communication, you talked about it, right? It's such a large part of the BA role. What are some of the key strategies BAs can take to improve their communication skills?
So at EPAM, we have lots of opportunities to practice that. This conference is, for example, a good way to get out of the comfort zone and practice public speaking. But sometimes we also have the discussion clubs. We have English conversation clubs. And also, even if you don't feel comfortable speaking up, it's a good opportunity to not be discouraged at first when you get out of the comfort zone, but also sometimes, reach out to other colleagues who might be more proficient. Find native speakers who might give you pro tips on how to communicate in a clearer and more decisive way.
Great. And another one, I'm a BA, kind of feeling stuck in a rut, perhaps, of feeling like I'm a scribe or a user story writer. And I know you talked about empowering people, and that's kind of from the management perspective, but let's think about it from the BA perspective, right? What can I do today to jump out of feeling that like I'm just a scribe or that user story writer?
That's also about this mind shift, right? And at EPAM, I'm happy to say that we have a lot of internal trainings that can give you that empowerment, or that can give you the help and assistance in that mind shift, right? So use the advantage of the existing tools. Reach out also to your line manager, because I recently heard a very nice sentence from a colleague of mine who said that, resource manager is not because our people are resources, but because that manager has the resources to help grow our talents. Very much like the sentence, and that's why feel free to reach out to that resource manager, because they might have the resources to help you grow, or will at least guide you in the right direction to make sure that you will feel that comfort going forward.
You bet. And I know we're globally dispersed everywhere these days, working on different projects and work with a lot of different personalities and cultures. What are some tips you can kind of share for improving communication skills globally?
This is actually a very good question, because different cultures will also communicate differently. But what helped me is, at the very beginning of the project, have this ways of working meeting where we can discuss and we can agree on rules of communication, but also ways of communication. Because in some cultures, I identified asking questions is identified, I want to clarify, I want to deliver better service. But in other cultures, it is identified as I am undermining your authority, right? Because I received the task, so I should deliver the task. But if I am asking, it means that either I don't understand something, or so cultural aspect comes into play. But if we will sit all together and we will agree that there is nothing wrong with asking questions, and that we again empower the people to build that comfort zone, that worst thing I can do on a project is when I see that the project is going towards a train wreck, I don't react. I don't do nothing. I don't say nothing. And then, when problems happen, well, I wish I could have said something. Well, that's already a bit too late. Right? So definitely, let's again build that cooperation, communication, and that environment where people feel free to speak up and never blame the messenger, blame the message.
Excellent. Well, we'll wrap with that. Thank you, Jan. Excellent insights here today.
The pleasure is all on this side of the screen. And once again, if someone has any questions, I am more than happy to have further conversations. So yeah, feel free to once again reach out to me on various different channels: email, Skype, LinkedIn, Instagram. Any channel is more than welcome. I'm always more than happy to network with you, get more insights from you. And I do hope to speak to you again on another conference in the future.
Hello everyone. Nice to have you here. So please welcome our next presenter. It is Yulia Kasarenko. She is a conference speaker, consultant, a corporate trainer. She is also the author of the book Business Analyst, A Profession and Mindset. Yulia is also the owner of What Change Consulting Corporation. She is the professor of business analytics at Humber College. She is a wonderful mentor and, of course, analytics expert. Today, Yulia will bring you some insights of building an analytics-driven company as a BA. So, Yulia, word to you.
Thank you very much, Valeria. Hello, everyone. I hear it's an exciting conference. Let me just share my screen with you, and we'll talk a little bit about how a business analyst can become a partner in building an analytics-driven company. And I heard Jan talking just now how we shouldn't look at business analysts as only scribes, and I totally agree with it. And more, we have to become trusted partners in our organizations, and not just someone from IT, not just someone documenting requirements. So we'll talk a little bit about AI trends really briefly. I'm sure you talked about AI trends a lot and you hear it all the time. We'll talk about aspirations versus reality and what can business analysts do to mitigate some failures that we can see in AI and data science projects today. And of course, we'll wrap up with what you can do to develop your own career in this direction and to become that trusted partner. So what is artificial intelligence? I know we talk about it a lot, but it really helps to reinforce the definition. It's about developing computer systems that can perform the tasks that normally require human intelligence. So understanding speech, drawing pictures, coming up with stories, being emotionally interested in another person, feeling empathy. Those are all things that human beings can do. So it's quite a tall task to build a system that is able to actually do the same. So what are some of those AI applications that we are already seeing today? Visual perception, recognizing images or self-driving cars. Large language models, they can speak to us back and create poems and write executive summaries for us. Embedded analytics in a business process, in manufacturing, in any workflow that a business manages today. Reinforcement learning, when machine learning models learn from responses in the environment and improve their own predictions. Search-driven analytics, where a user, a regular person, can type a question, a simple question like, what is the likelihood that we will hit our sales targets by the end of the month? And can analytics platform respond back by looking up the data and driving predictions and employing the right predictive models to give a response to a natural language question. This one, of course, is still kind of early in its development. An emergence of decision intelligence, which means empowering businesses to make more analytics-driven decisions versus kind of gut feel decisions. So these are just some of the AI applications. I know we don't have time to speak about everything, but I just wanted to bring a few examples to emphasize where you as a business analyst can play a role. And of course, it starts with even understanding these AI applications and understanding how can you do this? Like what actually is behind the scenes? What is in the back end of all of these AI applications behind the pipe? So in the back end and empowering all of these different applications is value locked in big data. Some of these require truly large volumes of data, and we all heard how much data was required, for example, to train ChatGPT or to train Midjourney to generate images. A lot of these models require huge amounts of data to be trained and to actually provide value back. So as business analysts, we need to understand what is big data and what does it mean for an organization to be able to collect and process and actually use the big data. So big data relates to anything, any large volumes of data that cannot be processed by traditional means. And by traditional means, we usually mean typical database management systems, relational database management. So big data will have huge volumes, high speed velocity with which data is generated, received, and exchanged, variety of data, which means many different sources and formats and the types of storage, different veracity of data, which relates to how trustworthy the data is. Do you even know where is it coming from? Can you rely on that particular stream of data for making decision? How do you know it's not a malicious party basically feeding you some data on purpose, and so on? And finally, the value. So the value of big data really comes from organization being capable of managing the high volume and the high velocity and variety and veracity of data. So value is not truly a given. It doesn't just come with big data. It needs to be extracted and it needs to be enabled. And we'll talk about how do you enable that. So what I want to highlight today really is there is a gap, there is a chasm between aspirations and reality in applications of AI today. What are the aspirations? AI is shaping our future and data science is a game changer. Data-driven companies rule the world. AI is the future of work. These are all amazing slogans, and some of them probably have huge, implications for our future. But let's look at the reality of today. So some of the examples from reality. Google hits the headlines for race change in AI. I'm sure you've all seen it just a few weeks ago. Big trouble, a lot of the uproar, and a lot of negative publicity for their recent iteration of AI model. AI meal planner suggests a recipe for chlorine gas when someone asked to propose some new recipes. Again, it's a safety issue. It's a dangerous proposition. Hopefully nobody actually took it seriously, but this is an example where sometimes these AI applications which are out there in the public, meant to be used by regular people, can actually create something completely wrong and even dangerous. Air Canada, and I'm in Canada, so I've read about it a lot. Air Canada defeated in court after its chatbot lies about policies. Again, Air Canada had to take the chatbot down, a lot of negative publicity, unhappy customers, and pretty much the chatbot undermined some of the reputational, status of the company by giving an answer and then going back on that answer. Another example, and you probably all heard about AI hallucinations, where large language models come up with the responses that are untrue, that are made up and fake. And ChatGPT, for example, hallucinates things like court cases when the lawyers are looking up and asking for similar cases to help them in their research. So in reality, there are a lot of failures. I'm not saying that all of it is failure. Of course, we all know about successes because, our confirmation bias means that we all are interested in successes. We read about it, we watch the videos, but we shouldn't forget about the failures Some of the failures, of course, stay behind the scenes, but there were some fairly recent surveys that were showing that up to 80% of data science projects may be failing. Some of them fail fairly early, so they never even make it to production. And of course, we don't see those in the press. Some of them do make it to production, and then we see headlines like this. So let's talk a little bit about why it happens and how should we understand it. So what is AI today? Artificial intelligence today, right? AI today, if you look at the main distinction between two types of AI, which are narrow AI and general AI, let's figure out what do we have today. Narrow AI is designed for specific tasks. So these algorithms solve problems that are framed as prediction problems. For example, predict what movie is customer most likely to watch based on what they watched before and based on their profile. That's a narrow task. And these algorithms, these AI algorithms make quantitative predictions by processing, analyzing data. So this is where big data comes in. That data contains patterns, and extracting those patterns help you make predictions. So narrow AI applications are based on predictive problems. What is general AI? General AI means an algorithm or a system that can perform a broad set of tasks just like you and me. It needs to, in some shape or form, imitate a cognitive process, which of course isn't based on large processing of large volumes of data. There are different types of cognitive processes in our brain that are not based on principles similar to machine learning. And general AI is supposed to be able to solve any problem. And what it means is not necessarily the problem that it has solved before. So there is one fundamental difference. Narrow AI, and this is, by the way, all we have today, all of today's AI applications are narrow. It is solving the problems it was designed to solve, right? So you design a machine learning algorithm to respond to Air Canada customer questions. That's all that chatbot can do. It cannot do any other cognitive task that a human being can do. So what we have to realize that the success of today's AI algorithms relies on data, relies on large volumes of data, and relies on machine learning and deep data mining algorithms that extract patterns from that data and then apply it to make predictions for the future. And that's a really, really fundamental and important thing for us to understand as business analysts if we were to become those partners to our companies and help them use AI in some practical way. Because if you think about it, if you work for a company, you work for a business, you need to always think about return on investment. If I'm investing this much money in this AI project, in this data science project, am I going to get return on investment? What is the value? So we really need to understand what needs to be in place to actually get that value. So we need to focus on understanding that today's AI applications are based on making quantitative predictions by processing and analyzing data. And that applies to even things like creating AI music, as creating pictures, and modifying movies to make the characters when the movie is translated into a different language to make their faces synchronized with a new language. All of it is still based on data. Now, why do AI and data science projects fail? And why so many of them fail? And I feel I'm now going to be repeating some of the messages that John just referred to, so I'm going to be brief. But a lot of the failures are attributed to fuzzy objectives. It's unclear what we're trying to achieve, unclear requirements, poor data management, lack of expertise, lack of trust, lack of ownership on business side, and lack of process integration. And if that sounds familiar, it's of course because Chaos Report for decades talked about these various reasons that any software projects fail, and that relates to data science and AI projects as well. But there are also some specific reasons here, right, related to poor data management, and very important one about lack of trust. So we need to maybe focus on this a little bit more, and I'll talk about data management in a minute. But in terms of lack of trust, think about it. We just mentioned major AI failures. Plus, anytime you're trying as a business to introduce any automation, right? Say, okay, let's automate some of our decisions. What happens? People get worried. Management gets worried. People are thinking about, am I going to lose my job? Okay, if that's the case, I'm not really going to cooperate. So there is also a bit of a fear of AI that exists, and some of it may be justified because we are hearing about some of the jobs maybe going away with the development of AI. But when businesses think about using this technology to improve their business, they have to think of how to build trust, how to introduce these new ideas, and it basically get collaboration back from your stakeholders, which is not that easy. And by the way, we as business analysts, our role is communicating, engaging stakeholders, keeping stakeholders involved. That also will involve building up that trust and their sense of ownership of these maybe future AI-driven applications. So this all brings me back to our role as business analysts in analytics projects and AI. I mean, we can talk about analytics projects as big umbrella for AI, data science, data mining, and any of those terms, because it all goes back to the essence of analytics, which is extracting value from data and using analytical insights from data to make better business decisions. So what is your BA role in that and in mitigating those failures? So first of all, your job is still the traditional, the classic definition of the job of business analyst involves understanding the objectives of the change, what business needs to achieve, what are those goals, and what are the requirements. What do you want to get in future? What features and capabilities you need in the future to be able to make better decisions, and so on. But the second one, very important one, is data understanding, right? Because again, we cannot develop successful AI solutions without having proper data to train those algorithms. So we need to start understanding the data. What do we have? What data sources we have? Which ones we can use? What types of data are available? How much data we need? Is it possible that that data is biased? How do we mitigate against the bias? And a lot of the success of that project will depend on us using the right data and using it the right way. And business analysts are going to be right in the middle, because without business knowledge, without understanding domain, you cannot use the data properly. And the third pillar is business expectation and managing business expectations, and maybe holding someone's hand and explaining to them why you need data, why without good data you cannot make it successful, and managing that problem of trust and the problem of ownership and the issue with stakeholder engagement. Because without that engagement, no project is going to succeed, and AI projects are no different. So what your destination is to become a guide and not a scribe. We're not just scribing, we're not just documenting. And the more technologically advanced is the project, the more you need to be that guide and that bridge between your customer and that technology. So you need to understand the capabilities of technology, what it can and cannot do, explain it to your stakeholders, and then you are truly becoming a partner in that project. So very briefly, skills and knowledge that you need. First of all, traditional business analysis skills. You need to know the domain. You need to know the industry. It's hugely important. You need to understand industry trends, competitive trends, and be up to speed with what's going on. Things like concept modeling, which relates back to a truly fundamental understanding of data and relationships between different groups of data for your business, are important. Things like process analysis, because how can you determine how to embed analytical insights or elements of prediction in your business process without analyzing the process? Root cause analysis. And again, you can use data mining to determine the root cause of business problems, to determine true contributive factors that will then help you make better predictions. So all of these are still important. On the other side, there is data focus. So you need to be fluent in data management. You need to understand the key concepts of data. You need to be involved in data governance, because again, without data governance, you're not going to have good data. You're not going to have good data science results. Understanding how to analyze data. What are the fundamentals of analytics? How determine those analytics requirements? Types and applications of machine learning. And that depends on what are you trying to achieve? What type of prediction are you looking for? What data you have? How much data you have? And that all defines what are you capable of doing in terms of that actual machine learning algorithm, for example. And last but not the least, and very importantly, keeping in mind the privacy and ethical aspects of using AI, again, are very important. And you as business analysts have to think about all types of requirements. So privacy requirements, ethics requirements are part of those projects. And sometimes technical people, get carried away with the technology, with the excitement of the development. But someone needs to remember about the ethics, about ensuring there's no discrimination, there's no bias, there's equal treatment, and all of those very important aspects that can truly get away from us. All right. So really quickly, now what AI can do for us? It can help us if we use AI tools as business analysts, right, for our own job. It can help us increase productivity, take over tedious tasks like research or analyzing, collecting data. Research more broadly, because AI, like large language models like ChatGPT, can be pretty good about summarizing data from many sources. We just have to be aware of hallucinations and that we still need to check our sources and validate them. We can analyze faster, again, because we have those powerful tools to help us collect data, analyze data, look at different sources and compare them. We can dig deeper because maybe some of this tedious research can be done by tools. So think about the power behind these tools helping you do your research and your analysis better. It can help you validate requirements. It can help you accumulate organizational knowledge. So just like ChatGPT gathered that knowledge from the internet, companies are now using AI tools to aggregate their organizational knowledge. So all of these things can help you also to do your job better on any project. And, these are just a few tools. There is, of course, many, like thousands of AI-based tools. But think about it broadly. You can use AI tools to do research, to check your grammar, to collect data, to create beautiful visualizations, to create PowerPoints, to keep notes, to make automated meeting notes and summaries for your stakeholders, and so many other things. So remember that you also can use AI to make your job more efficient, but it's more broadly, it's about how you can help your organizations use data and use capabilities of analytics to actually make them, improve their customer service or improve their process and so on. And you do that by getting more involved and becoming that trust partner. So I know we started a little late. We only have a couple of minutes. If you are interested to learn more about data management and analytics fundamentals, not just for business analysts, but for anyone involved in data projects, you can check my course. The link is here and the QR code. And I also run a mentorship circle for all analysts who want to improve and survive on difficult projects, survive difficult tasks, and figure out what tools and what techniques to apply to different types of projects and situations. So reach out to me from any channel, YouTube, email, LinkedIn, etc. Thank you so much for inviting me. Hopefully we have a couple of minutes for a few questions, if you have any questions.
Thank you, Yulia. It was a very wonderful presentation. Yes, we have a question, quite interesting one. So how do you establish the baseline? Where are we now? And the degree of analytics-driven a company can be? So what is the degree of analytics-driven in a company?
That's an interesting question. And actually, there are even some articles and grades of analytics maturity in companies. And you can think about it broadly in terms of the types of analytics that company not just is able to produce, but it is using to make decisions. Starting with descriptive analytics, which are your reports and dashboards. That's all we do. We look into the past. The next level up is when companies doing diagnostic analytics. So when you use analytics to determine why something happened, why customers are leaving, why our manufacturing process produces more defects. So that's diagnosis of the root causes. And then the next level up is when companies start to use predictive modeling to try to predict the future. And that's where true decision intelligence starts, by you running predictions, running predictive models to make you better decisions. And beyond that, there is prescriptive analytics, where you start to use analytic solutions and machine learning and AI, you can call it AI, to make decisions based on predictions, based on data. So if you want, look up some of my articles, and definitely look into analytics maturity.
Thank you. So we don't have a lot of time left, but if you have any questions, feel free to contact Yulia and ask her personally. Thank you all. So let's move on to the next speaker.
Thank you.
You're on mute, Maria.
Okay, now? Hello,
Yeah,
Emal?
you're good. You're good. You're good.
Hello, Emal. Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me clearly now. Welcome to the final session of the BA Excellence Conference, hosted by the global BA community. We are thrilled to have our expert speaker, Emal Bariali, presenting his insights into the full stack business analyst journey to becoming indispensable BA, which promises to be super cool. So stay tuned and don't hesitate to leave your questions either on the questions and answers section in the We Are community page or in the live chat of the YouTube page. Questions will be addressed to Emal either on the spot or at the end of the session if there is time. And don't worry if there will be any open questions. You can always contact Emal in his LinkedIn page. I will add it to the chat. I'm super excited to introduce you to Emal, the visionary founder behind the BA Blogs, an online platform that offers hands-on business analysis training and support for BAs, new or experienced. With a passion for innovation and sharp eye for design, Emal has played a pivotal role in shaping BA Blogs into a leading name in the industry. Emal and his family currently reside in Canada, where he continues to drive innovation and excellence in the field of business analysis. Additionally, BA Blogs boasts a YouTube channel with over 31,000 subscribers, providing valuable insights and resources for business analysts. Emal's talk will dig deep into the BA skills, providing visual examples of deliverables that business analysts should strive to produce in order to deliver value across the entire solution stack. So, Emal, it's a great pleasure to have you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for that great introduction, Maria. Folks, I'm going to just dive right into the materials and introduce myself a little bit deeper, a little bit more, because I believe I have the full hour, but I have probably way more material cover than I have in the hour. So I'm going to dive right in by asking, first of all, if anybody remembers what we talked about in the conference last year, because when we were here last year, everybody was very frightened. A lot of business analysts were very frightened about AI, and everybody thought AI was going to take over everybody's jobs. We're happy that that hasn't happened yet, right? But when we were here last year, we talked about a few things, so I'll give us a quick overview of that. If you remember, feel free to put it in the comments and we can kind of make this a more interactive conversation. But I'll talk a little bit about, get us caught up a little bit about what we talked about last year. I'll get into the materials for this year. And maybe if we have time left, we can speculate about what might be coming next year, because we do have a research agenda for next year that we could potentially report on. All right, but next year is a big to be determined. It's a big question mark. Okay, so for last year's conversation, essentially we came on and we shared some of the key findings that we had from the AI research that we were doing with our research partners out of the UK. And essentially, our conclusion last year around AI was that AI is not a replacement for your judgment. It's not a replacement for your experience or your critical thinking abilities. right? Regardless of what it does for you. Last year, it wasn't at the point where it could be a replacement for that. Still not the case this year, okay? And we talked about some of the risks that inexperienced or untrained analysts could potentially face in trying to leverage AI. Essentially, the biggest risk is that analysts last year, I think, were at a huge risk of over-relying on AI to do a lot of their work. I'm sure that as an analyst, you've probably had a chance to go through and maybe experience some of this on your own in trying to get AI to do your job and then finding out where it falls short. And again, if you recall from the last year's conversation, if you were there, you'll probably realize that AI cannot replace any of these 4 elements, right? It can't replace your experience, still can't replace your judgment, still can't replace your critical thinking abilities or your ability to perform really deep analysis, okay? I use it every day, ChatGPT especially, the advanced version, I use it daily, and it still falls short in many of these areas, okay? Whether that's good news or bad news, I'll let you decide. Last year, we also talked about a usage pattern that could help you avoid some of those risks, right? And what this usage pattern essentially does is it bakes in a lot of your own critical thinking, it bakes in a lot of your own analytical abilities to try to leverage ChatGPT in a way it's going to help you a lot more because of a lot of those shortfalls that it had and it still has today, okay? And then last year, what we did is we actually went through an example where we showed you what the response looked like if you take the risky approach, and then we showed you in detail what the response could look like if you followed the interaction pattern that we had suggested, essentially. All right. We won't get into any of that. If you missed all of that stuff, I'm going to recommend that you find the replay of last year's BA Excellence Conference where we talked about all of this and just watch the full hour because we get into quite a bit of depth. It should be on the BA Excellence YouTube channel, I believe. This year, the goal is to answer 2 questions. Okay, what is the future of business analysis in the AI-driven world? We're going to try to answer this question every single year, okay? But I'm going to try to give you our latest guidance on this for this year. And we're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about the skills that you should be trying to learn right now very well. We're going to get into quite a bit of detail with the skills, okay? For those of you that are short on time and only have really the first 5 minutes of this conversation, I'm going to give you the conclusion right up front, okay? Here's the answer to both of those questions. Essentially, the future is still largely unknown because the progress that we've made from last year to this year hasn't been that big in the business analysis space, but we're constantly researching, okay? Speculatively, there is a high likelihood that AI is going to start to take over a lot of this lower level operational work that business analysts do. Okay, that's our speculation. And our guidance for this year is to explain to you what you should be doing to respond to that speculation that we're making here. Okay. What you want to be doing is that you want to make sure that you've mastered the operational work well enough so that you can use our interaction pattern to get the best results out of AI. And then you're going to push all of your grunt work at the operational level onto AI, and you're going to move into a different area, essentially. And that area is at the strategic level of the organization where you're helping senior managers make strategic decisions, but also to bring their strategy down into the operational level. So if you only have 10 minutes, you're short on time, that's the conclusion right there. We're going to spend basically the next 50 minutes diving into this in a lot more detail. All right?
Actually, there are 2 questions, Emal, already regarding that.
Sure. Yeah, we can address them right now. Yeah.
I will relevant to that. The first one is, how can business analysts navigate the evolving landscape of technology and industry trends to remain relevant and indispensable?
Okay. That's a great question. Yeah. Go ahead with the second one. I'll answer them both.
And the second one is, how do you envision the future role of business analysts evolving, particularly in light of advancing technologies like AI and machine learning?
Okay, look, I'm going to answer both of those questions by the end of this talk. If you still have those two questions, come back to me and I'll elaborate. But that's exactly what this entire talk is all about. So great questions. We're completely on point. The conclusion that I'm actually going to give you is that with this guidance and with where we're at, your goal should be to build as much latitude in your skill set as you possibly can. Okay. And to explain the concept of latitude, I'm going to rely on a framework that we've built that can explain to you how to focus on which skills at what time in your career. So we'll spend a lot of time. But essentially what latitude means is that you should have the capability as an analyst to move from strategy to operations on an as-needed basis. So for example, your client or your employer asks you to come and help them do a business case because they're trying to figure out whether something makes business sense to invest in or not. Okay, as an analyst, what we do to help clients in that area is to help them build a business case, and there's a specific skill set that goes around that. Okay, that's you helping your organization at the strategic level. Then on the next project, as you see in one of my client engagements, I've just taken a screenshot right out of my LinkedIn profile to show you this is an actual client engagement that I've had in the near past. So I help them essentially do a business case, and then they ask me, hey, we got this other system that we're trying to deploy really quickly. It needs some very detailed specification work. Are you capable of helping us with that? And say, of course. And so what I do there is I help them produce detailed specifications right on the next project with the same client, right? Your ability to go from strategy deep into operations and then somewhere at the tactical level and then maybe back into strategy, that capability is what I refer to as latitude. Okay, you should be able to move from a conversation about the company's investment into a certain solution down into writing detailed specifications and then somewhere else. If you can start to build that kind of latitude into your skill set, you're likely going to thrive very well in the future of your career. Okay, and we're going to talk about specific skills in just a minute. That's the conclusion. That's essentially, again, if you're only here for the first 10 minutes, focus on building latitude. Now, in essence, what latitude means is that, as I've said, is that you have the ability to go up and to go down, okay? And when you're going up in that spectrum that you're following up and down, going up essentially means that you are moving away from working at the details of the product level to handling advanced stakeholders or handling advanced stakeholders and helping them architect their business and design their business. All right, so a lot of analysts tend to start their roles in maintaining applications, really working deeply with a lot of software products. If you're in that position in your career, you need to start kind of elevating your skill set into business design, possibly some business architecture, but also in the people side of things, where you're actually starting to master a lot of more advanced stakeholder analysis and, very importantly, stakeholder management. Okay. At a certain point in your career, you may eventually reach the point where you're actually influencing company policy. Okay. This is as high into strategy as a business analyst you can get into, where you're not just out there solving defects on a software product. You're now dealing with senior management and you're trying to influence the policies and the procedures that they put into place that governs how the organization actually functions. Okay, that's what it means to move up into strategy. And so for us, dealing with the policy level is the highest level of strategy that we can get into as business analysts. And we're starting to get into the world of business architecture at that point. That is the top end, right, of the strategic area of our roles as business analysts. But again, remember, having latitude means being able to move down. So what does that mean? Being able to move down means that you can write very detailed specifications that are specific across the different layers, the different architectural layers of a software product, right? Have you mastered all of those capabilities? Okay. When you have this kind of range, what you have the ability to do is to leverage AI to do the work that it's good at, right? And you can pick and choose what kind of work to offload onto AI based on the type of AI engine you're using. Are you using ChatGPT? Are you using Copilot? Are you using Claude, right? Those tools all have different strengths and weaknesses. And when you start to build this kind of latitude, you can decide on the fly based on your conditions, what your employer or what your clients are using as their AI tool. You can decide right on the fly what kind of work to outsource to AI versus what you're going to do yourself. And that's the whole point of building latitude. That's a very long introduction to the conversation, but that brings us to the concept that I want to talk to you about today, which is the concept of the full stack business analyst. Because without that context, it's really difficult to understand what we mean by full stack, right? You might have heard of the concept of a full stack developer. You may or may not know what that means, but business analysts also have a stack, and our stack looks like this. Okay. This is part of the framework that we have built to teach business analysts what the profession is really about and what kind of skill sets fit in where they fit in, essentially. Okay. So let's elaborate on the stack a little bit more and get into some very specific skills that you should be focusing on down here at the operational level, right? Where you're dealing with a lot of products versus at the strategic level when you're up here dealing with people, possibly dealing with some policy. And again, in business terms, they would call the process world mostly the tactical level, but we'll get into that in a second. If you've done any business degree, you understand those three layers of an organization, essentially. My perspective comes from close to 2 decades of doing business analysis. I got my first role as a business analyst in 2005, and I've been doing nothing since 2005 and today. Okay, I finished my last client engagement, I think, just over a year ago, and so I'm in the industry daily doing this work. Okay, I've delivered over 20 solutions, and I've actually been teaching for quite a while, for about 8 years here. But the thing I want to kind of highlight here, and I know it's a little bit taboo to talk about income, but look, I don't consider it taboo, because when I finished my education, I was deeply, deeply in debt. And my goal as an analyst was to increase my income as much as possible so I could pay off my student loan. And so I talk about income all the time, and I've managed to increase my own income by a factor of 5 since I started my career. So 5x my income. And we can talk about the details of that if we need to. I think we need to turn that into less of a taboo subject, because income is very, very important. Big part of the reason why you're doing the role of a business analyst, right? So let's talk about a little bit about how we're going to go throughout this conversation. Okay, in the first half, I'm going to talk to you about the first 3 layers of the stack that we've mentioned here. Okay, we're going to talk about people, we're going to talk about processes, we're going to talk about products. And with products, I won't get too deep into the architectural layers, just enough so that you understand what the BA skill set is at each of those layers. Okay, we'll go into that in the first half of the time that we have left, and then we'll talk a little bit deeply about skills, how to acquire skills, and some of the next steps you should be taking to make sure you're setting yourself up for success in the new world that we're all up against. All right.
Emal, there are some more questions, I can make them to you, and you can judge if you want to reply now, later, or it's gonna be replied on the go. So one of
Sure.
them is, there are like a mix of them. Some are general. One is specifically for BA blogs, but I will address them and you can decide. The
Sure.
first one is, what role do you see collaboration playing in the success of business analysts, both within their teams and across different departments?
Okay.
The second one is, on your opinion, in your opinion, what are the biggest challenges currently facing by business analysts, and how can they overcome these challenges? I guess
Okay.
that's going to AI, but in general, not just on AI.
Got it.
Another one is, how do I handle a situation where my client employer doesn't allocate any time for an assist current state analysis?
Okay. That's a great question. Let's come back. Let's get back to all three of those by the end. Okay. So if you can keep a running tally of the questions, we'll come back to each of those because I have very direct answers for all of them. I'll make sure that I get through the message here, and then we can come back to all of those
I
if
have
that
one
makes
more.
sense.
I have one
Okay.
more. Could
Okay.
you
Okay.
provide any insights or lessons learned from your experience in founding and leading BA blogs? I guess that can be at the end. I'll like keep a note.
Yeah. I'll share thoughts on all of those subjects. More than
Great.
happy to talk about it. I have a feeling that we're going to have a lot of questions coming out of this one too. So we'll probably have to pick and choose a couple.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll continue on just first talking a little bit about the people side of things. Okay. Your role as an analyst is essentially to create what is referred to as alignment. And what do we mean by alignment? Okay. As an analyst, you generally speaking, you have two different sets of clients. You have the business side of folks, where a lot of your customers and your end users, right, live. And then you have your IT stakeholders here, where you might have an architect who's in charge of making sure all the big pieces of the software solution fit together. And then you might have a couple of developers who are actually doing a lot of the coding and some of the testing, right? In between these two different sets of stakeholders, you should look at your role as a role that's trying to essentially align the interests of the business at each of these different levels, right? You might have some folks at the strategic level, you might have some folks at the tactical level, and then you might have a large group of people here at the operational level, right? Your goal is to align the interests of this fairly sometimes large, but sometimes very varied set of objectives that they may have with the goals that your IT stakeholders, which is essentially to deliver a good product, right? The way you do that as an analyst is through what is called stakeholder analysis. Okay, and stakeholder analysis, essentially what it does is it helps you to identify the right people who need to be part of the conversation, right? On many projects, you'll find that there may be a subject matter expert that's missing that you need. Your stakeholder analysis makes sure that that person is at the table, right? During some of your workshops, you may find that the architect doesn't have enough time to provide feedback on feasibility of something that your customer is asking for, right? That's the architect's job during the analysis process. Your stakeholder analysis helps you outline the fact that there is that we're missing a stakeholder on the other end who should be at the table. So essentially what stakeholder analysis lets you do is it gives you a list of the different roles that should and could exist on a project, and it helps you figure out, hey, do we have representation from this group or not? And if not, how do we deal with that? What are our mitigation tactics? What are our contingency plans for missing a role that should be there that's not there, right? That alignment, essentially, if you start to perform your stakeholder analysis and more advanced stakeholder management, you start to understand that that tool right there can help you to align the interests of your stakeholders from the business side. It can communicate them. You can communicate a clearer set of objectives to your developers, and also to make sure that your business stakeholders understand what is and is not possible from an IT perspective. You need to facilitate that entire communication cycle. Okay. A lot of times your customers will ask you questions that are either cost prohibitive or just nearly impossible given your current company's current, what they call application portfolio, which has things like technical debt in it, right? A lot of that sometimes needs to be factored into the conversations that you're having with your business stakeholders so that their requirements are not completely out of line with the constraints that your organization has, okay? Stakeholder analysis is the first step in making sure that you can facilitate that cycle of communication between your stakeholder groups, okay, to create what we call stakeholder alignment. When it comes to processes, your business processes are the best, your business process models are the best tools for addressing the root cause of most issues, okay? Most issues in an organization, most issues with solving in an organization are usually not software related. They're often process related. What happens in a lot of companies, especially large enterprises, is that they kind of grow a little bit organically and their processes build in a way that's less than optimal. And layering additional layers of technology on top of a process like that are not going to give your organization the results that they're looking for. They'll invest millions of dollars into IT when the way that the work is actually being carried out isn't optimal. And so they're not getting the benefit of that investment that they're making. The way that we solve that problem, we as business analysts, we have a process, right? We perform our stakeholder analysis to make sure we have identified the right groups of people and mitigated the fact that some people may be missing from the process. And then we go through a process where we essentially model the current state of their business to make sure that we understand where the gaps are and how their business actually functions. We typically run through a number of process design workshops to help them establish their future state. Okay. And if you have the right people at the table, you understand how the business currently functions and what their major pain points are, you've engaged all of the right stakeholders to build a future state design, very importantly, a future state design that all of your stakeholders agree to. That's how you solve the root of the problem. And then layering technology on top of that can start to have the impacts that it's supposed to have from a return on investment perspective. Without going through this process, and you'd be surprised at how many of my clients try to skip this, okay? I oftentimes, when I'm on a new client engagement, they say, hey, we need to build a product. I say, okay, sure, but are we planning on actually trying to see if we can figure out what some root causes of these issues are or not? Are you interested in just building a product for product's sake, or are you looking to get a bigger return on investment from the work that you're expecting me and the rest of your team to do? Okay. I oftentimes, as a consultant, as a BA consultant, I try to steer the conversation in that direction if I can, as often as possible, because I understand that this is the process that we should be following, right? And many clients will sometimes try to take a shortcut directly into the product. But this is how you solve the root of many of the business challenges that should be solved. We've had to blur this out because it's part of actually this is the answer to the assignment in one of our courses. So I can't show that to our students right now because we don't want to give them the answers. They have to arrive at the answers. But future state process design, without it, whatever we talk about in enterprise systems and products becomes a little bit pointless, right? We as analysts might be employed if they choose to just go into a product and we'll have a job, but is all of our work in vain, right? Or is it giving them the value that they're actually looking for? Because the purpose essentially of a product or an enterprise system is to support the people and their processes. So if you want to visualize it, the purpose of a software product is to support a future state process that everybody has agreed to. If you don't have the prerequisites, right? Prerequisite number 1, prerequisite number 2, sure, you can build a product, but I mean, what's the point? All right. So with that context, let's take a little bit of a deep dive into what products actually are and how, as an analyst, you should be visualizing your products to understand what the difference is between an enterprise scale product and a consumer software product, because there are two completely different things. If you work in enterprise, the challenges, the product related challenges that you're going to run into are very different than if you're working for a consumer products company, like you're trying to build an Instagram or something like that. That's a social media app that consumers have access to. Those types of apps and products are built very differently than enterprise scale products. And an analyst view essentially should be across two different dimensions of an enterprise product. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the functional aspect. Oh, let me undo that. The functional aspect of a product, which is when looking at the features that need to be delivered across the different modules that exist. I'm just going to quickly change the color of my highlighter here and make sure we have a color that can. This is, oh, yellow doesn't appear either. You know what? I'll just change it to a pen so that we are. So we have here, sorry for the little wait here, but essentially we have features, right? Features across modules is one view. The thing that analysts struggle with are the second dimension of the view, which are the architectural layers. Now, every piece of enterprise system, if you talk to your developers, if you talk to anybody who's technical, they'll tell you there's 3 layers. It doesn't matter. It's been the case for decades, and it will be the case for decades to come. So these architectural layers are unlikely to change anytime in the future, okay? And the architectural layers essentially mean that development and therefore analysis has to happen at the user interface or the user experience level. Development and therefore analysis has to happen at the application logic level and at the data level. And the data level is a little bit complicated because there's data structure and then there's data exchange. Well, won't get into that level of detail here, but if you can at least understand that your analysis deliverables need to be produced across these 3 different sublayers of the product, you're already better than, I would say, a big chunk of analysts out there. Because what this does is it now creates the framework inside your mind to think about your skills. Because there are skills, believe it or not, that are very specific to the types of modules you're delivering. And there are skills related to each layer, each architectural layer of the product that you're building. Okay. If you understand that about people, processes, and products, I think we're good for where we're at. I just want to keep an eye on time, 25 minutes. I'll try to get through the rest of it relatively quickly so that we can get to some of the questions that we have. The BA skill set that I'm going to recommend for new entrants into business analysis, this is if you've never done business analysis or you've never been formally trained as a business analyst, are these ones that I would say are across the strategic level, okay? And these ones that are way deep into the operational level. Okay, and that's what the color coding essentially means, is that blue for us is strategic, green is operational, and orange is somewhere in between. Okay. At the strategic level, the bare amount of skills that you should be trying to pick up in the world of strategy is to make sure that you can do your current and your future state analysis. You want to learn how to do a little bit of gap analysis between your current and your future state, even on small initiatives, if you can, to add some discipline into your work. And stakeholder analysis is something that you're performing, doesn't matter which level you're at. Okay, you have a single customer and a single developer working on a very small project. Your stakeholder analysis still tells you, hey, these are the types of roles that need to be filled. It might just, all of those roles might be filled by one person, but it adds that level of discipline where you say, hey, there's a role that's not being filled. We don't have a subject matter expert. We have a user representative, but there's no SME that can tell us the answers to these questions. What do we do, right? So if you can learn this basic skill set right now and just master it, you're good. When it comes to actually elaborating on the skill set, let me just clear the screen a little bit here. When it comes to going from strategy into operations on a small, relatively small initiative, you want to be able to do some level of future state design. Even though your customers might kind of fight against it, you want to start to kind of add that in as, try to steer the conversation in that direction, okay? Jan earlier talked about you don't want to be a scribe, right? You don't want to just take something that a customer tells you and do it, because you're not adding a whole lot of value there, right? Jan talked about it, Julia talked about it, so I won't dwell on that concept. But the way you actually do that is by starting to lobby for certain things that add discipline, analysis discipline, into the practices of your organization. And one of the things you do is you try to steer the conversation as often as you can into making sure you do some future state design on the projects that you worked on. And then what you do is once you have your future state, there's actually a strategy you can use to extract your use cases and your user stories from that future state. And we teach people how to actually do that through a simulated project. But you can extract your use cases and your user stories and then elaborate those use cases and user stories using skills at different layers of the product architecture, right? So the skills that you have at the UI UX layer are essentially these two right here. The skills that we kind of covered, the basic skill at the data layer is this one here, but there's way more at the data layer than just this. But if you're just getting started out, you want to learn a little bit of data modeling. There's different ways you can do that. And to tie these two layers together, you have to master business rules. Okay? Because what this does is this skill set essentially gets what the customers ask you for, which is essentially a lot of times represented in the form of user stories, is what your customers ask comes in. But if you're going to connect that ask to what your developers need to actually build on that ask, you need to elaborate using this skill set. And what you're essentially doing here is that you're giving your developers a deeper level of detail at the UX layer, right? So this is our UI layer. This is your logic layer here. Logic. Okay, I won't try it out, but that's your logic layer, and this is your data layer. Okay.
Emal,
Going back to yes.
let me jump here because there is a relevant question about that.
Sure.
About the okay, why do you recommend we learn user stories and use cases? Aren't they the same or overlapping skill sets?
They are overlapping, but for a good reason. Okay, so the reason why you should try to learn both user stories and use cases is that your user story oftentimes is a friendly way for your upstream stakeholders. Let me just go back to that slide. Your user stories is a very user-friendly way for your upstream stakeholders, these folks here, to communicate their want. But a user story on its own in the format that it's often used isn't enough to communicate that need to downstream. And what use cases do is that they add an additional level of discipline to your user story. Okay, so your user story says, as a customer, I want to do X. Sure, I understand what you need. What use case does is it says, let's go down to another level of detail on this user story by talking about how you're specifically going to do that. And the mechanisms that use cases add for you on top of your user story is to give you the interaction pattern that the user expects to follow to achieve that goal that they want through their user story. So you should learn both. If you have to choose one, focus on learning use cases and then just call them user stories, because use cases are far more powerful than user stories. Okay, that's my best guidance I can give from years of practice. Oftentimes when I'm on client engagements, a project manager or somebody more senior will come and say, hey, we don't do use cases anymore, we do user stories. I say, sure, no problem. I just write a use case and I just call it a user story. And oftentimes they don't even know the difference. So you'll run into a lot of companies that are trying to go agile and they're being a little bit dogmatic about it. You can be very flexible and just rename your deliverables to fit into the agile world, but you can't skip the detail, because essentially, I don't want to get into this conversation now, but many organizations think that by going agile, that they can cut the analysis, and they can't, unfortunately. Okay, if I find a way for them to do it, I'll help them do it. But until today, there's shifting from use cases to user stories oftentimes is used as a way of saying, we don't need all those details. Just tell us what the customer wants and we'll figure it out. And that type of a shortcut often leads to some undesirable results in the long run. So I won't get into that, but short answer to your question is that you should try to learn both. And if you have to choose one over the other, you should play a bit of a trick and learn use cases and just call them user stories. Okay, and we teach you in our course, we actually do that because we produce what we think are user stories, but we use a lot of use case mechanisms to produce that.
About the
Okay.
stakeholders, can you use a RACI list for stakeholder analysis?
Can we use a what this? Sorry?
RACI, I'm guessing it's about the matrix.
Oh, the RACI matrix. Okay, yeah. You can, but I think that a RACI matrix typically gets used on much larger projects. The level of stakeholder analysis you do on smaller projects, you can deal with other simpler deliverables. So the RACI matrix, essentially, it lists out the roles along the top and the activities and deliverables along the side and says who's responsible, who should be consulted, etc. It's a great tool to use. It's more of an architecture tool, though. So I do use them from time to time when I'm helping my clients develop their future state processes to help them decide, hey, who in your organization is now responsible for this task versus that task. So I use it in business architecture quite a bit. If you're comfortable using it, yeah, absolutely, use it. Go ahead. We don't teach that as a tool. We have simpler ways of dealing with it with stakeholder analysis, but it's a tool that definitely does get used in a lot more advanced situations, I would say. Are we okay to move on? Let me just make sure, do a quick time check. I'll try to get through the rest of what I'm talking about really quickly, and then hopefully we have some time for more questions, because there's a ton of great questions that folks have asked, okay? Hopefully you understand the skill set. If you need to, take a screenshot of it. If not, just come back to the replay on the BA Excellence YouTube channel and just take a screenshot of this. If you're a business analyst just trying to get into the industry, focus on these skills as much as you possibly can.
There is a question about that. Where is the entry point? Like, it's a great group of skill sets, but where a new BA can start? Where is the entry point?
The entry point would probably be hard to say, because this is an integrated skill set. So if you're going to start learning them all, it makes sense to start learning them all kind of together in a way. But if you have to really, really choose, you want to start with something easy. Okay. The easiest skill to learn is to learn how to write a user story. And then elaborate that into use cases, because that's likely the easiest and it'll probably have the biggest impact in the short run. But you want to very quickly move on to doing good process design work and then elaborating your user stories and use cases this way. So if you have to choose just one skill, I would say, you know what, I'm going to put both of these as one skill. Learn how to produce these two as your entry point. We'll talk about how to manage product backlogs and everything else. We haven't even mentioned it yet, but that's another skill that you probably want to start to pair. Okay, so if you have to start in this box right here. Okay, because these are more advanced skills, and especially when you start to get into like detailed scenario analysis, doing state machine modeling, things can get very complicated, and the likelihood of people giving you time to do current state analysis is low, right? So you have to find shortcuts for it. Yeah, start in this box.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So we have skill acquisition and next steps. Let's bring this conversation back up to what we were talking about in terms of skill acquisition. Okay, so when it comes to skill acquisition, there is a less effective way of doing it and a more effective way in doing it. By far, the most effective way of acquiring skills is to make sure that you can find a project to get yourself on. And what that oftentimes does, it gives you the opportunity to shadow more senior people to see how projects actually run. There's nothing that can teach you how to become a business analyst faster than that. Okay, I'm an analyst. Sure, I have a training company where I teach the business analysts, but when an analyst asks me, hey, what's the fastest way I can learn? I'd say that forego formal training even. Try to get yourself onto a project as quickly as you possibly can, because you'll learn way more. Okay, and I was speaking from experience. I did 7 years of education, right? 7 years of formal training I did. But in that 7 years, I didn't learn as much as the first year of my actual first major project. That first project that I worked on taught me so much more. I'm lucky because I had the formal training to fall back on to make sense of a lot of the stuff that was going on. But the actual learning of how to do the job was on that project. Very stressful project. I won't talk about it now. I was very stressed out that first year of my career. But if I had to do it again, I would do it again because I got to shadow more senior analysts who taught me how things actually work on the ground. Forget about theory. This is how things are actually done. Okay, because theory teaches you things oftentimes in a perfect environment, and you'll never run into a perfect environment. You got to get stuff done in the real world. Now, our training program actually, that's why we structured our program in the way that we have, is that you actually get to shadow these 3 business analysts on a simulated project. So if you can't get on a project and you're looking for the next best thing, then I'm going to recommend our course. But again, if you can't get on a project, even put the course on hold, get yourself onto a project. So do job shadowing as number 1. Try to get some formal training as number 2. Many people ask me whether certifications are a good way to learn the profession, and oftentimes that's like the third option, because what a certification does is it gives you the knowledge, demonstrates to a lot of hiring managers that you have a base level of knowledge, but a certification can't actually teach you how to do the job. It's actually, on that front, it's not as good as formal training in actually teaching you how to do the job. Okay, so your skill acquisition strategy recap: get on a project. If you can't, take a course that gets you as close to a project as possible. And if you can't do that, then try to get some certification. But don't expect your certification to prepare you for the real world. Okay, it'll teach you the base knowledge. When you hit the ground running, the stress of having to deliver under constraints of cost, schedule, right? And anything and everything under the sun. But your project manager says we don't have the budget for that. Okay, you run into that problem. Now now the rubber hits the road and you got to solve the problem under those conditions. That's where the real stress comes. Okay, so that's the guidance on strategy. Where the future of your career will take you, I'll explain that in terms of these skills. Okay, so if you recall earlier, very, very early on in the conversation, I essentially said you want to build latitude. Okay, to build latitude, what that means is that you have to make sure that you understand things at a couple of different levels, right? You have to understand things at the strategy level, right? Some stuff at the tactical level, but there's a lot of tactical stuff that can happen here that we don't talk about in this conversation. But you want to make sure you start to learn stuff at the operational level first. Because when you do this and you start to master these skills, and the time comes for you to start now offloading stuff onto AI, you get to decide, okay, ChatGPT is good at helping me develop user stories, but it's not necessarily good at doing state modeling, right? Whereas Copilot might be the opposite. These two are actually quite similar, so probably not a good example, but the future tools, right? Depending on which tool you're using, you can now decide, are you gonna offload your grunt work here? Are you gonna try to offload your data modeling onto ChatGPT? Which one are you gonna do? It helps you to kind of align your skill set with the AI tools that are being made available to you. Because remember, when you're in enterprise, you don't just get to use whatever tools you want. ChatGPT is not an option in many enterprises. It's usually just Copilot. Why? Because companies have their reasons for not wanting to use ChatGPT. Many companies won't say, do not plug our proprietary data into ChatGPT. We have Copilot for that, right? So you're not going to have the flexibility to choose whatever AI tools, even if they're available to you on the market. So learning how to actually produce this and going through the difficulty of learning how to produce all of these deliverables helps you make the decision in a very efficient way on what tool is going to do what for you when these tools start to get greater adoption into the enterprise. And essentially, your goal, your long-term career strategy goal should be to try to offload as much of this as possible onto AI and start to move yourself up from the operational world into the tactical, and if you can, into the strategic in the world of strategy. So from a career strategy perspective, this is how I followed this before ChatGPT and AI was even a thing. And I've achieved a great level of success in my career, right? What this has done, what I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to offload as much of this stuff. I mean, I'm telling you this because I'm trying to do this for my own consulting practice, right? I'm trying to offload as much of this work so that I can offer more value by helping my company and my clients decide, hey, how do you assess a vendor properly to make sure it's a good fit for the requirements that your customers have? How do you bake that into, how do you solicit data from vendors to make sure you're getting the data you need to answer those questions? How do you compare one product to another, right? How do you factor all of that stuff into the company's ability to decide whether it's a good investment or not? Those are, by adopting those skills, you're starting to now add a ton more value, because one decision that a company makes here during options analysis and during their business case, that one decision can have millions, tens of millions of dollars of impact. Versus if you get a user story wrong, okay, we maybe lost $5,000, right? But if you purchase the wrong product, your company could lose a lot, or they could gain a lot, right? The impact that you're making as an analyst as you move into the tactical and the strategic layers is huge. And tying this back to income, the value that your clients will see in the decisions that you're helping them make up here is way bigger than the value down here. And your income as an analyst will eventually reflect that. So going back to my profile, when I talked about increasing my income by 5x since I started, is essentially by following this strategy, right? Following the strategy that we kind of, this strategy here, where if you look at my LinkedIn profile, you see for some clients, I do nothing but business cases, okay? On some clients, like the one I showed you, I'll do a business case and then I'll move into a project where I'm managing the backlog and I'm writing user stories, right? This, the ability to move up and down here, gives you what we talked about, which is latitude, right? Let me find that right skill, latitude, right? If you remember, for just this one client, I did a business case and then I went and produced detailed specifications. And then I led a bunch of workshops on a separate project and I helped them integrate with third-party partners, right? That latitude is what keeps me employed, is what keeps my clients coming back to me over and over again and saying, hey, we got another project, can you do this? Here's what this one, if you look at this, if you go to my LinkedIn profile and you look at the work that I did through Capgemini, I spent almost 6 months doing a business case. Very little operational work for that, right? So that's what, that strategy is what will make you successful in the long run. And hopefully you have a picture of the skill set that you need in the short run, which is essentially just take a screenshot of this, okay? That's the talk. I don't know if I had anything else I wanted to say. Let me just quickly make sure that there isn't anything else. Oh, yeah. If you want to start learning how to, if you want to get deeper into this, we have three lessons for you to go on our website. You just go to bablocks.com/start. And essentially what I'll do is it'll be an investment of about an hour. I'll send you 3 lessons, and those 3 lessons will talk to you in a lot more depth about products. It'll talk to you about people and processes. It'll talk about a lot of these deliverables and show you examples of a lot of these deliverables that I kind of flashed up on the screen for you. It'll show you examples of those deliverables. So that's my sales pitch right there. Let's get to questions. Do we have any questions from the folks that we have around what we talked about here so far?
Okay, we have only 3 minutes, Emal, but there is one more question that came up. Could you provide examples of specific deliverables that demonstrate the value added by business analysts across the solution stack?
Yeah, those deliverables are actually right. I can, in 3 minutes I can't, but if you just sign up, you'll get that 3rd lesson. It'll show you all the examples. That's all I can say with 3 minutes left.
Maybe we can go back then to the BA blocks specific question. Could you provide any insights or lessons learned from your experience in founding and leading BA blocks? Oh,
in founding BA blocks? Yeah. Launching a company from the ground up is very difficult. So that's my lesson learned essentially is that as a consultant, as a business analysis consultant, I help my clients fix their companies at BA blocks. I have to run my own company, and that has turned out to be way harder than I ever imagined. If I don't know how hard it was when I first started, I probably wouldn't have started. But my biggest lesson learned is that building a company from the ground up requires a lot of actual analysis work, where we have to build our own internal processes, and we have to, like, launching a company from the ground up. If you want to learn more about that, we can have that conversation, but it is very difficult because you, as the founder, are responsible for all of this, plus a lot more, okay? In larger enterprises, you have a whole management team, right? A whole executive team that's responsible for this, and a whole management team and a base of employees that's responsible for all of these things. when you're trying to found your own company, it's a bit of a different ballgame. So that's my. It's hard, but well worth it if you're willing to stick it through.
Perfect. Unfortunately, Emal, the hour is about to finish. Thank you, a huge thank you for your awesome contribution to our final session at the BA Excellence Conference. Your insights into the full stack business analyst journey were incredibly valuable and inspiring. You really rocked the stage, and I have the feeling that if we will let you, you will go keep up till the night and learn so much
Yeah.
from you. Next
Yeah.
time, you left the audience buzzing. There have been so many questions, and there are still some. But maybe I can. I gave your LinkedIn page in YouTube, and I will add it also to We Community page to contact
Yeah.
you personally.
Sure.
Can't wait for to hopefully collaborate again in the future. And with that, let's move to conference closure with Eugenia and Roman. Thank you again, Elmar. Emal, for
Thank
everything.
you.
Thank you.
Hello, guys. It seems like it's a fraud. I'm not Eugene, I'm not Roman, but my name is Darina Kapestan, and I'm a co-head of Business Analyst Community, and I will close today's conference. So, first of all, I want to ask you to join our community. So use this QR code or just use the link on YouTube channel. So yeah, why you need to join us? Because of course we have a lot of conferences, a lot of great events, a lot of great articles that you can read, watch, and gain a lot of knowledge. And yes, we have a great network of great specialists like Emal or uh, all the speakers that we have this conference. So yeah, I hope you had time to scan the QR code and join our community. Let's move on. So yeah, it was a great conference. It was 5 days with the 5 talks and 5 practical sessions. With the 10 talks and 5 practical sessions, right? So yeah, it's the biggest conference that we had during last 2 years, and I hope you enjoyed it. So we tried to focus mostly on business analyst responsibilities, industrial knowledge, AI, data analytics, system analysis, which is all very demanded skills. And I hope you had a great time with that. So with the Q highlights, we have more than 2,000 registrations with 88 countries, and we had a great 21 speakers, which you can see on this slide. So I hope you can you was able to look at our talks during the conference, but if not, you can rewatch them on our YouTube channel. Big kudos to all of our partners for your information help and for being with us this conference and last conferences too. And talking about the team, it was the hard work of these great specialists. Thank you so much. Thank you for all of our moderators again and the speakers. And the last thing that I want to highlight is, yeah, you can join our May workshop with Carl Wiggers. So again, you can scan the code, you can um, join it on a platform and also find it on our YouTube channel. And it seems like I have Roman in the studio. So Roman, do you want to tell us more about this conference?
Yeah, guys, I guess that's an unexpected surprise visit from my side. I just wanted to say that, we really had a lot of very interesting talks during this week, and I thank you to all of you. A huge thank you comes from me for joining our conference, and for staying this whole week with us. I really do hope that everything that you've learned during this week is really of a value for your professional career, and for you, to become this real next generation business analyst. Because that was basically BA job transformation thing which we wanted to cover this week. Feel free to kind of share all the events that we had if you feel that they were useful for you. You will have those YouTube recordings, share them with your friends, engage in the comments in those YouTube videos. We can also have our speakers commenting them and answering your questions there as well. And let's keep the dialogue open, because that's the year of transformation for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. And Roman, can you tell us, please, this phrase like, share, subscribe?
Yeah. like, subscribe, share, and
Thank
comment.
you. Yeah, guys. Thank you for being with us again. And it's the end of BA Excellence Conference, BA Job Transformation. Have a great day and see you next conference.